Today is April 2nd, and it's day 2 of the book club. This month, we're talking about the runaway robot, and we're having some adventures in space.
没错，我们今天要继续介绍我们昨天介绍过的机器人雷克斯。我们昨天简单的介绍一下啊，机器人雷克斯呢，他陪着我们的主角保罗，从小到大，对不对？保罗呢，他是16岁的这个青少年，然后后来呢，因为他们家全家可以搬回地球，从那个 Ganymede， 就是木星的卫星 Ganymede 搬回地球嘛。然后到后来呢，如果说这要搬的话，雷克斯他不是属于家族的一部分，他不是家族的一份子，所以他爸爸呢就把他卖给当地的农民。好，这个时候发现到说啊，居然你把我的保姆给卖了，于是我们的主角 Paul 就跟这个雷克斯呢两个一起逃跑。好，就没有坐上回那个地球的班机，然后之后呢，就开始坐上另外一个这个太空船，航向不同地方的这个银河系的这种各个地方，展开他们的冒险。那我们今天要介绍的是我们的这个作者和他的一些背景。
So don't forget that the runaway robot runs away. So the stress here is a little different. Runaway, 一个单词 in our 标题 in our title is an adjective.But that verb phrase at the end, 还有不同的 stress there. Let's hear our story, and when we come back, we got paragraph 1.
The Runaway Robot. Lester Del Rey, the author of The Runaway Robot, wrote many books and short stories during his career. However,Some people credit him and his wife, Judy Lynn Del Rey, with doing much more than simply writing stories. They created the modern fantasy genre. Judy Lynn was a senior editor at a book publishing company. She hired her husband to create a fantasy line of books, and they established Del Rey Books.In addition to writing, Lester discovered fantasy authors such as Terry Brooks and edited their books, while his wife promoted their stories. Judy Lynn and Lester were an amazing fantasy and science fiction publishing team. When they started, fantasy books were not very popular. However, thanks to their shared vision,More people began to enjoy the genre, and Del Rey Books has achieved a lot of success. Over the years, Del Rey Books released stories from both Star Trek and Star Wars. They also published a series that regularly appeared on the New York Times bestseller list. Lester had a knack for knowing what audiences would want to read, and Judy Lynn was described as one of the most brilliant editors in publishing. The Del Reys left a lasting legacy that continues to impact modern fantasy
literature.Okay, friends, before we begin today, I kind of want to talk about this book really quickly. So, The Runaway Robot was written in 1965 when the USA and the Soviet Union, today we would call it Russia, were in something called the space race. And they wanted to explore outer space because they can control it and maybe have like bombs in space. And the big goal was to get to the moon, which happened in 1969, which is only 4 years after this. Now, what's really special about this, that the first airplane flew in 1903. 66 years after the first airplane flew in human history, people walked on the moon. And that is incredible to think about. 66 years, the first person flies, and the next person is walking on the moon. Wow.
哇，所以老师呢给我们一些历史背景。这本书呢是在1965年所写的，然后那个时空背景呢是刚好在美国跟苏俄，好那时候还叫苏联，对不对？现在就是俄罗斯。那个时候呢有太空竞赛，好就是那种 space race， 好就变成是说我们看看谁能够先上太空，因为毕竟太空是一个未知的领域，如果你掌握了太空，你可能就是。像老师讲，他们那时候还有很多紧张的关系，我们可以在上面可能制作一些武器啊，远端攻击啦这样的概念。结果呢，在1969年，也就是这本书写完4年之后，好，这美国呢就成功的派人登陆了月球，就是 Neil Armstrong， 好，就是登陆了月球嘛。所以那时候呢，其实就在这样的背景之下，好，这本书是这样子的。你可以想象一下吗？老师刚刚提到说，1903年的时候，我们这个莱特兄弟吧，好，反正就是才让那个第一架飞机起飞。1903经过了66年，1969年的时候，我们就把人送上太空了。想想看，66年的时间，前面是1903第一架飞机起飞，想不到66年之后，哇，我们已经把人送上太空了，很恐怖吧？
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah， 太神奇。
All right. Let's get into this story. Lester Del Rey, the author of The Runaway Robot, has written many books and short stories during his career.
好，我们来看第一句话，告诉你说 ，Lester Del Rey， 好，就是我们说的莱斯特·德尔雷，就是我们这个作者哦。他说 ，The author of the Runaway Robot， 就是机器人雷克斯的作者 ，has written many books and short stories during his careers。在生涯中呢 ，career 就是生涯的意思，创作了许许多多的书籍呀，还有短篇的小说。
Okay, friends, let's read our first sentence here. Lester Del Rey, the author of The Runaway Robot, wrote many books and short stories during his career.
好，我们来看第一句话，他告诉你我们的作者叫做 Lester Del Rey, the author of The Runaway Robot。好，这个是我们机器人雷克斯的作者。然后呢，他告诉你说 wrote many books and short stories during his career， 在他的生涯当中呢。Wrote many books and short stories， 意思就是指说他创作了非常非常多的书啊，还有短篇小说。
Okay, look at his name, Lester Del Rey. Underline this Del Rey because 如果我们小是那个 Lester, this D 还是要小写 D. But teacher, this is his name. Shouldn't it be capital D? No, because this is Spanish and that Del means of the. Now, what does Rey mean? Well, let's ask more French. How do we say king in French?
Roi.
And this is Rey. It means of the king. In Spanish, it's R-A-Y. So it just means of the king. So if you know French, your Spanish can be pretty good, pretty
原来
fast.
如此。
Yes.
所以呢，在这边的话呢，如果在法文里面，他讲到是 the king 的话是roi R-O-I， 在这边 Rey 的话其实就是一个 R-O-I 的变体，就是 of the king, Lester of the king.
That's right, that's right. So this is Spanish. Be careful here. 这个 del, it has to be little d, but we'll see it's used differently later. We'll see that English 可以很麻烦. However, some people acknowledge or say he did this thing. They credit him and his wife, Judy Lynn Del Rey, with doing much more than simply writing stories.
好，我们来看第二句话。第二句话的话，其实要记得是 credit somebody with doing something， 就是让这个人得到这样的功劳，所以说后面他做这件事情呢，这个功劳是属于他的这样的感觉，所以他就说 ，However, some people credit him and his wife, Judy Lynn Del Rey, with doing much more than simply writing stories。好，很多人就觉得说，很多人认为是他还有他的妻子，好，朱迪。好 ，Judy Lynn， 好，她的话也是冠了夫姓嘛，对不对？她做的事情绝对不只是写出很多故事而已哦 ，more than that.
Be careful, Judy Lynn. 这个连在一起，如果没有连着号， you'll say Judy Lynn Del Rey. But because there's a hyphen here, you have to say Judy Lynn. You have to read it together. You'll see this in 那个如果你搬到美国的南部 you'll see that a lot in the South. Okay, they created the modern fantasy genre. And my father loved reading fantasy books. He had a big wall of fantasy books. That was his favorite kind of book to read.
啊，所以在这里的话，我们看到一个字 genre 这个字的话是来自于法文，好，它的意思就是指 different types or different kinds， 尤其是指到书籍的这种文学啦，或各式各样的不同类别，或是电影的类型 fantasy、sci-fi， 好，各式各样 romance 等等。老师刚刚提到说他爸爸最喜欢的这个最喜欢的就是 fantasy 奇幻文学了，所以在这边他说 they created the modern fantasy genre， 他们开创了现代奇幻文学的先河，非常非常厉害的两个人物。
Okay, how do you make this zh sound accurately? Well, it's pretty easy. You just put your hand on your throat, and 我们会先说那个 sh 的声音，就是 sh，然后现在简动，你就是把那个 sh 变了有声音的， so zh. That's all it is. Genre. Judy Lin was a senior editor at a book publishing company. A book publishing company is just a company that makes and sells books.
Yeah， 所以在这边的话，a book publishing company 很多时候是出版公司或者翻成出版社等等，都是很好的。在这边他提到说 ，Judy Lin was a senior editor。Senior editor 就是资深的这种编辑。很多时候提到编辑的话，你会听到什么 editor in chief。好，就是指总编辑，它那个 in 跟 chief 这个地方，它会用 hyphen 把它连起来。Editor 的话就是编辑的意思。At a book publishing company 这种图书出版公司，它在里面当资深的编辑。
Okay, underline the IOR in senior. And Anthony, earlier I asked you, how do you say king in French? And you said it's
哇
spelled R-O-I. But 这边是 R-E-Y, Del Rey, 对不对？ So 为什么？ Well, I and Y are kind of brother and sister. They're very close. And you can see it in this word here because we say it's senior. 这个 I 事实上是一个 Y， 这个是跟 Roy 有关。那个 IOR 上面你写一个 YOR。
原来是这样。
Also 小心 junior, senior 都是一样 IOR。
IOR， 要特别注意一下这个字，还有它的一些那种语言上的这种变化，演变而来的，太酷了。
That's right. That's a weird one, isn't it? I saw that and I was like, I can't wait to talk about it.
Yes.
Okay, ready. Our next sentence begins. She hired her husband. She hired her husband to create a fantasy line of books, and they established Del Rey Books, capital D, because 现在 it's not his name, it's the name of the company.
没错，所以这边这个地方他告诉你说 she hired her husband，好，她就雇佣了她的丈夫，好，聘请她的丈夫 to create a fantasy line of books， 她就开始创建这个奇幻文学图书的这种系列的作品哦。然后呢，怎么样 ？And they established 就是 set up 的意思，好，像就建立了，好，就建了一个这个新的，创立了一家新公司，叫做 Del Rey Books。在这个地方 DEL 的 D 变成大写的原因，是因为这时候它变成是公司的名称，那真的是专有名词了，而不是说这个里面 of the 的用法，所以这个 D 的话要大写。
Okay, so in addition to writing, underline in addition to, oh my goodness. In addition to writing, Lester discovered fantasy authors such as Terry Brooks. My father liked reading him and edited their books while his wife promoted their stories. So after to, 通常你就是要原形动词, right? But in addition to is a preposition. So 在之后 you need to say writing. 不可以说 in addition to write.
没错，在这里的话 in addition to the to 它是介系词哦，所以在后面你要接的时候，如果是动词的话，要变成 VING。所以 in addition to writing， 除了写作之外呢 ，Lester discovered fantasy authors such as， 他这边的话 Lester 他还有去发掘了其他一些奇幻文学的厉害作家。他就告诉你还有谁呢 ？Terry Brooks， 好，那 Terry Brooks 也是 Chris 他爸爸非常非常喜欢的这个作者 ，and edited their books while his wife promoted their stories。他就不断的去帮忙这个编辑这些这种书籍，然后呢，他老婆呢去负责推广宣传 ，promoted their stories， 去推广这些奇幻文学的这种作品。
Okay, very quickly, pro means forward, means 往前. And MO, promoted, the mo is actually move. So it means to move forward. So you're telling everyone, go buy our books. This pro means forward, mo means move. 可以写下来. And when we come back, we got paragraph 2. Hey friends, welcome back to Enjoy English School. And before we begin paragraph 2, we learned about Lester Del Rey. But did you know that Del Rey, he liked to tell stories about his name. And so sometimes he told people his real name was Ramon Felipe Alvarez Del Rey. And then sometimes he would tell people his name was Ramon Felipe San Juan Mario Silvio Enrico Smith Harcourt Brace Sierra y Alvarez Del Rey y de los Verdes. But his sister knew his real name was Leonard Knapp.
老师讲这个一个很好玩的故事啊，就变成是这个 Del Rey， 我们今天讲的这个作者呢，他很喜欢跟人家乱讲一些乱编故事，讲到他自己名字的故事，他可能有好几个版本，然后你可能听到一个比较短一点的版本，另外一个是比较超长的版本
Super long.
然后呢，这个 Del Rey 的这个 sister 就会跟人家讲说没有啦，他名字就叫一个
Leonard Knapp, which is a very Pingchang name. His pen name is really cool, but his real name is not cool.
Not cool.
Leonard Knapp. And, so Del Rey really liked telling stories, and maybe 有一些人，如果他不是有名的作者, if he weren't a famous author, you would say this guy's a liar because he would lie about things. But it's kind of funny. He's just lying about his name, and his sister's like, his name is Leonard Knapp. What are you talking about? Mario Enrico Ibarez. Leonard.
直接被这个戳爆，对不对？
Dude, here we go. Hey everyone, it's Enjoy English School. Hey everybody, my name is Chris Alvarez Felipe Alvarez. 不好用，
对，真难用，太长了。What a mouthful!
It's too long. Yes, that's right. But we're gonna do that one time. Make our own Spanish name.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Paragraph 2. Judy Lin and Lester were an amazing fantasy and science fiction publishing team. They were so powerful. They were super popular.
没错，我们来看这一段的第一句话，说 Judy Lin 好，就是他的老婆 ，and Lester 我们的这个作者 were an amazing fantasy and science fiction publishing team. 他们本身是一对非常非常杰出的奇幻文学跟科幻文学出版业的这种搭档。所以在这边的话，我们看到一个这个 science fiction， 很多时候你会看到一个短版的叫做 sci-fi， 好，就是 SCI 然后 FI sci-fi 就是指 science fiction。
写下来 ，That's a good one。
没错，就是科幻的。所以奇幻的 fantasy 跟 sci-fi 科幻的这个作品也是两种 genre， 好，不同的这种 genre。
So fantasy means like magic and dragons, and science fiction means outer space and technology. All right. When they started, fantasy books were not very popular. And even then, I remember my dad read a lot of these fantasy books. They were not considered cool. It was not considered like highbrow reading. I don't know how to quite say this, but it was considered kind of low to read fantasy.
啊，这样子，在当初的时候呢，其实大家对于奇幻文学跟科幻小说啊、科幻这些东西，本身觉得说啊，好像不太入流，大家觉得说不是大家很喜欢，或甚至觉得哇，读这个很酷的感觉，至少在当初还没有流行起来。
It was like reading comic books for a long time, where it was considered very low for some reason. So, however, thanks to their shared vision, more people began to enjoy the genre, and Del Rey Books has achieved a lot of success. Now, in the last paragraph, we used the past tense. Lester Del Rey wrote and they created because they died in the 1990s. But Del Rey Books is still here, so we can say has achieved a lot of success.
没错，在时态方面的话，我们前面提到说啊，这对夫妇做了很多事情，我们使用的是过去式。那原因是因为他们在1990年代的时候呢，就已经离开这个世界了。但是 Del Rey Books 它的这个创立的公司到现在还是存在，所以在这边的话，我们可以使用现在完成式 has achieved a lot of success。所以整句话他就说了 ，However, thanks to their shared vision， 好，还好，很多亏了有他们共同的这种远见。 Vision 就是你对未来的看法、未来的期望。好，这个地方 vision 可以指的是视力，好，那是不是你能够看得很清楚？这个也叫 vision。但这边话指的是你对未来的想象。More people began to enjoy the genre， 越来越多人呢非常非常喜欢这样子的这种文学类别。And Del Rey Books 他们的公司呢 has achieved a lot of success， 也非常非常成功，公司的蒸蒸日上。
Yeah, your vision is your plan for the future. That's what I was going to say. Anthony said it just like I did, just in English. It's great. All right. Over the years, Del Rey Books released stories from both Star Trek and Star Wars. Now, remember what I said, I think yesterday, that the space race this book came out in 1965 in the space race. And one reason the USA and the Soviet Union or Russia wanted to go outer space is because they thought that would be a good place to fight and control the other country. So, of course, you start having things like exploring outer space and Star Wars. You're having a war in outer space. The idea of fighting up there was really important at that time.
没错，所以老师呢，我们上次就昨天呢有介绍到说，其实在当初写这本书的时候，刚好是在美国跟俄罗斯在做太空竞赛的时间，而且他们彼此的关系很紧张，各个项目很多地方运动竞技，西洋棋什么东西都要比，对不对？好，在这边的话，你就看到说这边他谈到说 ，Over the years, Del Rey Books released stories 出品了像是 stories from both Star Trek and Star Wars 星际大战、星际争霸战，有的时候 Star Trek 还会被翻译成星舰迷航记，所以这个 Star Wars 也算是符合当初那种美俄两国在之间这种不断的去互相比拼的这种过程。
All right, so Star Wars, this was a big risk because people thought Star Wars was going to be a disaster. And Del Rey Books bought the story before the movie came out. They sold 4.5 million copies before the movie even came out.
所以说其实事实上他们做了一个豪赌，非常非常很勇敢的，因为那时候《星际大战》还没有上映，他们就买了这个《星际大战》书的版权，然后在电影上映之前，他们已经卖了450万本，所以他当时的时候，大家觉得说，真的会有市场，会有销路吗？我们赌一把，然后到后来居然大卖。
All right, we're almost done here. Here we go. They also published and they started to make and sell a series that regularly appeared on the New York Times bestseller list.
好，他告诉你说 ，They also publish a series。好，就他也出版了另外一个系列 that regularly， 非常非常常 appeared on the New York Times bestseller list。好，这个 New York Times 指的就是纽约时报，他们就有一种畅销书的排行榜嘛，那常常榜上有名。好，这个系列丛书里面就非常非常多，好，受到大家非常非常的喜爱。
Lester had a knack for knowing what audiences would want to read, and Judy Lin was described as one of the most brilliant editors in publishing. The Del Reys left a lasting legacy that continues to impact modern fantasy literature.
好，所以最后这两句话我们来看一下。Lester had a knack for something. If you have a knack for something， 意思就是你还蛮知道 ，you're very good at it。好，在这里的话指的是他知道怎么样 for knowing what audiences would want to read， 他很知道读者要什么。And Judy Lin was described as one of the most brilliant editors in publishing. 那他的老婆呢 ，Judy Lin， 她在出版业界也是非常非常响当当的人物，被大家觉得说，哇，你是非常非常厉害的一个编辑。好，最后这句话说 ，The Del Reys， 好，这两个人 left a lasting legacy. Legacy 这个字我觉得很棒啊，很多时候你会听到 legacy 的话都是那种遗产啦，或者是那种留下的一些成就跟影响力，好，都可以把它翻译成 legacy 这个字。That continues to impact modern fantasy literature， 仍然对着我们现代的这种奇幻文学这个类别呢，还有非常非常深远的影响。我们这个 lasting 就是指持续很久的，你可以把它翻成深远的影响。
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today at Enjoy English School. I'm Chris Ramon Felipe Samuan Mario Silvio Enrico Smith Harcourt Bray Sierra y Everez Del Rey Gorski.
And I'm Anthony.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.